If it's okay, Leonardo, with you, I would like to start.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome officially to the second edition of Hub Chats. I'm Nena from Camera Obscura Hub. I have the great honor to introduce our guest, the photographer Leonardo March. Originally from the lovely Puerto Rico, he has been a resident of New York City for quite a time, a Brooklyn-based visual journalist, currently covering photography, video and graphs, protests, breaking news and art in New York for the Haitian Times. Together with Leonardo, we will discuss about photography, and we'll put a special accent on his visit to Macedonia. Leo, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing your time
Thank
with
you.
us. I would not take
Thanks to
long
you.
from your time. I just want to note that this session will be recorded because we'll be sharing this on our social media. And I will start this session with the general question, like why photography? What inspired you to become a photographer in the first place? And thank you
That's
again.
well. Let me see. I think well, it's like a long story, right? It's like one of these love relationships that sort of like grows across time, right? You meet someone and you like the person, but it doesn't happen right away, and it takes a while for the right conditions to happen. So I think that's how I will describe my relationship with photography, because I discovered when I was in college, and that was 20 years ago, maybe more. I lost count. Um, and yeah, I was looking at I went to a gallery and I was looking at some images, and there was this particular image that really caught my attention, right? And it was mostly the effect that it had on me. It was just a simple picture of a bar, right? It was like from inside of the bar, and you could see the bartender kind of like posing for the camera, and you could see the drinks, and then you could see towards the left side, right by the frame, kind of like light coming in from the outside, right? But you could not see the outside, of course, because we were indoors. And I don't know, when I saw the picture, for some reason, maybe the composition, maybe because it was so beautiful, at this moment, I don't know exactly why, but I just wanted to see what was happening outside of the frame. And that feeling kind of like confused me to the point that I was like, wow, I want to try doing this thing, whatever it is, right? I never got an answer, but the effect that it had on me, like I wanted to do it. I wanted to try it. And I did. And back then we had film. I began using film, and I, wasted a lot of film, just sort of like learning and trial and error, and just sort of like taking like 100 pictures, and then only one perhaps will be just decent enough, not even good, but just decent enough. And yeah, and so on, just sort of like eventually went to digital, and just sort of like was doing it for fun. And I noticed, right, like whenever I talk about photography, it was something that felt very personal in some way. It came from the inside, but at the same time, weirdly enough, I never thought of it as a job. I just thought of it as something that I enjoy doing, right? And then, little by little, as I was navigating my way through life, I decided to jump to photography, and and here I am. I
What's
think I
that?
think I missed part of your question. What was part of your question?
Well, what did inspire you, and was the you're moving to New York, was that part of the whole photography process, that you wanted to pursue photography New York, and why like New York?
Well, it goes a few years back. It was actually Boston.
Okay.
I was living in Puerto Rico, and I was not a photographer, but I was kind of like in some transition, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life, just like I've been doing for the last 15 years. Um, and and I decided to go back to Boston because I used to live in Boston. I went to Boston, and one of the plans was to become a photographer. So when I got settled in Boston, started going out to events, like public events, because it's easier at the moment I thought that it was easier to, just to practice photography, to get close to people, and people will kind of like, wouldn't say like, hey, why are you taking my picture? They will expect to have photographers around. So I started doing that for a while, and that kind of like became my weekly practice, I would say. And then because of Facebook and social media, people started knowing that I was taking pictures. And I guess at some point I became like good enough that I started getting jobs, in different things. At the beginning, it was mostly commercial stuff like events and museum openings or museum events. And yeah, but I think it was sort of like triggered by trying to find something new in my life, right? There has been like a couple of moments where I was like, okay, I want to do something. I need something else. So I kind of like grasp either a new practice or something that I had before in my life, and then kind of like take it seriously, and that gave me like fuel for the next few years. And so far, it's been working.
Great. Now you also work as a visual journalist. Like where that passion came from, and if you could tell us more about what is the meaning of visual journalist. What areas do you cover? What challenges are you looking as a visual journalist? And was that the reason for you to do your master degree in New York, or just elaborate more? Because I've been seeing a lot of pictures that you took from protest and political rallies and arts and culture in New York, and I think it's got to do with your job. So if you can tell us more about that.
Yeah. Let's see. So New York was part of that. Now this part is in both New York. After a few years in Boston, I came to New York, and then at some point I decided to sort of like formalize a little bit of my practice by going to school, because all of the photography that I always done has been or has the style of photojournalism. I never been, I don't think, like an artist or fine art photographer. I never had that sort of like, I think part of my personality, definitely it is art inclined, but I never been able to be just a complete artist, right? Because I think, I don't know, because of my background or my personality, but I'm always being kind of like more like centered on practical things, right? And I always had like a connection with social movements, an interest with social justice. So I think all of those things combined into my interest in photojournalism, right? So I would say like from 2015 onwards, I started like going to a lot of like actions and a lot of protests, right? To document what was happening. That was in Boston. And I had a project with another photojournalist, which was documenting protests in Boston. It was around the time where Black Lives Matter came to the national scene in the United States. So there were a lot of protests, right? Because there was a summer where a lot of like African Americans or Black people got killed by the police, right? So there were protests constantly, and then the other photographer and me, we took it upon us to document what was happening. Because a lot of the press, they will go to the giant demonstrations, right? But there's a lot of things happening in different cities. There's a lot of like events and art events and protests that are small, right? Like 10 people, or it's like a neighborhood event. And that sort of thing like disappear, or maybe just stays in people's smartphones. So we wanted to, in some way, kind of like contribute to the historic memory of the city, right, of Boston. So that sort of like kept me on my path as a photojournalist, right? And then when I moved to New York, I again was sort of like trying to figure out exactly what would be my next step. And I was like, well, you know what? I think maybe it's time to formalize my relationship with photography or with visual arts and make a commitment, right? So I went through grad school. So I spent like the last year and a half in a state of being a zombie, just sort of like working 13 or 14 hours per day, you know, trying to learn the basics of journalism and photojournalism, and also incorporating video into my practice. I always was curious about it, and I have some other tools because now with a DSLR you can do video, right? But then when I went to school, I kind of like acquire more of those skills. So now I have like, I think I widen my skills, but it's more complicated, right? Because when you go to a protest, you have to figure it out. The brain works different when you are taking photos and when you're doing video, right? It's completely different. Even like physically, it's totally different, right? Photography could be more like here, 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 but video, in my experience, in my limited experience, it just, you have to select one moment, stay there, and then go to the next one. At least when I'm in a public event covering it. So that also, it just adds like a new complication to things, right? Like when to take a picture and when to do video. And sometimes it's just, you don't have the answer. You just sort of like have to do it and then say, oh, damn it, I missed like that picture, you know? But it's been, I've come to enjoy it, you know?
Okay.
Sorry,
But
I know there were
kind
more
of
questions there
preparation,
and I didn't answer all of them. So if you want to remind me of the other questions, I can go back to them.
like what preparation do you make, like especially when you go on a rally, on a protest? And this couple of years were very difficult for America, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter. So if you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, for instance, in my years in Boston, protests were never that violent or aggressive. There were maybe like one or two moments where I felt that things were getting a little bit out of control. But never, that never happened actually. But New York, I know that at the beginning of this last summer, things were getting, you know, kind of like crazy, but I was not there because of grad school. I didn't have the time to go, but also because of my migration status, because I'm not a US citizen. So, you know, there's always a risk if you get arrested. Because of the laws in this country, you know, you could get deported and so on, depending on, you know, there's the context of where you get arrested and so on. But usually I don't do any, because I've been doing it for so long. Like I don't expect the action or the protest to be violent. For the most part, I don't take any special preparation, right? I just have to make sure that I have, of course, my two cameras. I go out with two cameras, one with a wide with a 24, and then another one with a 70, right? Which is more like a detail, right? Just to try to capture different kind of moments, right? Like more context, but also more specifics. And yeah, I go to the action. I look around. I get like a feeling of things, and then find where are things happening, right? When you see, like when you are among people, when you are in crowds of people, you get to see where things are happening because people are looking, where people are gathering, like the sounds and the energy of the place. But you know, at some point you do all of these things without thinking about them. And then I kind of like, depending again on what is happening, I try to find that epicenter of action and sneak my way there, you know, with my cameras, take my photos, do what I need to do, and then maybe like go around, sort of like, you know, covering also, because a lot of things happening. Photographers tend to go and cover, you know, speakers or the people that are the main attraction in an event. But sometimes a lot of things are happening that are just, you know, no one pay attention to them. But there's a lot of interesting things happening in an action or in a protest.
Do you get, you know, like that feeling and the emotion? Does it get to you, you know? if it gets like too difficult to, you know, if you're seeing some kind of a scenery, something that it's not pleasant, because I guess they're like peaceful, but most of the time they can be even violent. Does it get
Yeah,
to you?
well, not anymore. I think maybe at the beginning in Boston that were, and around that time where Black Lives Matter were, you know, growing as an organization. I wouldn't say that it will get to me in a positive way. I will get emotional, right? Because I think it's a beautiful thing when you see so many people singing or protesting or, you know, chanting. I never felt like overwhelmed in a negative way, like stressed out or anything. For some reason, even my personality, me as a person, I'm a very like mild, kind of like quiet person, I would say. But I do enjoy those sort of like events where there's a lot of like, I wouldn't say chaos, but energy, where there's a lot of
Mhm.
energy. I do enjoy that. And I think that makes a difference in the picture that you take. You know, even like if there's a band playing, that makes such a difference, right? In the
Yeah.
energy of the event, but I think also in the work that you get. Because you kind of like get into it, right? You start feeling more. I don't know how to describe it. I thought about the things in the past, trying to understand, but you know, there's something, of course, I imagine that creators or artists feel the same, right? When they get into that space, mental space, magic happens, right? So it's the
Yeah.
same with photography.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of factors to that come into play. You know, when to for that moment to, you know, the energy that I have in the day, or the kind of protest, or the events that are happening. You know, like I don't know. There are different things. I don't know how to describe. I wouldn't know how to describe them. But there's certain either rawness to something or something that feels like real. You know, like because there are 1,000 protests, right? And a lot of them perhaps are just, you know, they go to the emotions, but sometimes there's something that happens that is like emotional and real, and that really gets to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, these events can get to me, but in a positive way, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
But again,
Well,
recently, at least in New York and in Boston, mostly in Boston, the protest hasn't been, except for that period that I mentioned at the beginning of last summer, right after George Floyd was killed. Um, that definitely New York thing got really hairy, really, really bad.
And
and
do you
okay,
sorry,
Branko, sorry.
one
Go
question.
ahead. Go ahead.
Do you photograph on a daily basis, or you? I mean, I guess there is something happening every day in New York, and you can go out and do your job. But do you choose what kind of test do you want to photograph, and how do you choose?
Well, for my job, it's a combination of both, right? Like they asked me to go out and do certain things. Like this morning, for instance, there was like an event in the north of the city in Queens, um, that had to do with the Haitian diaspora, right? Like the Haitian people living in New York City, and a few of them went to that event to protest, right? Because they believe that it was like an event sponsored by the government in Haiti, back in Haiti. So because of the political situation there, the Haitian living here that are against the government went there to protest, right? I couldn't go to the protest, but I went to the meeting point to interview a few of the organizers. So that was something that they asked me to go and cover. Um, but you know, in other cases, I can tell them, hey, I have this idea for either a visual story or an idea for a project, and they will approve it, right? Um, like we were working on what they call a package of stories, right? That had to do with housing in New York City. So I thought of the idea using Google Maps because I don't know in Macedonia, but at least in the United States and in New York City, there is like a visual record every time the Google Maps car passes by your street, there is that record, right? So you can go back in time. And in Google Maps, you can see 10 years in the past how your street looked, right? And in New York, because of all of the issues of gentrification and the housing, how it has changed, I thought of the idea of using those images, right, from 10 years ago, and now just to see, how things were changing in the city. So that's something that I proposed, and they were like, yeah, sure. And it is visual journalism. It's not traditional because I didn't take any of the pictures. I just sort of like curate the gallery, right? But at the same time, I like doing that sort of thing, right? It just sort of like pushes a little bit the boundary of what visual journalism is, I think. Yeah, and it was really interesting seeing just 10 years ago a regular house now suddenly become this kind of like luxury apartment, right? That for people that professionals or I don't know. So it's a combination of both. They ask me, they send me to do stuff, and I propose ideas. I don't shoot every day. Sadly, there has been moments in my life where I would do that. Like before becoming like a photojournalist per se. Like I was doing a lot of street photography. I would go walk around like for hours in New York City, and that's something that happened like a few days per week. Never on a daily basis because I had to work. But sadly, no. Sadly, my frequency of I do a lot of work in the computer. Sadly, kind of like editing video or researching stories. So, yeah, I'm hoping to change that. I'm sure that with a bigger publication, like if I were working for the New York Times full time, I'm sure that I will be shooting all the time. And that would be nice, I think. Because it's like you get to know the city a lot, like my neighborhood. I've been living in my neighborhood for almost 4 years, and now in the last few months that I've been working with the Haitian Times, my neighborhood, sections of my neighborhood, there's a lot of Haitians living there. So because of my job, I've gotten to know like places and streets, and have like a better sense of what my neighborhood is. So it's photojournalism can be an amazing profession just because it allows you to experience a lot of things, I mean, the fact that I'm talking to you guys is because of my job in some way, and that I went to Serbia and Macedonia to take pictures,
Yeah. So that's my next question. Do you travel a lot?
Not really. Not really. In the past few years, because of grad school, and because of grad school, and because I haven't had the money to do it. But I've done a few trips. Not you're talking about photography trips, right?
Yeah.
No. I think that was the first time that that Macedonia trip. That was the first time that I ever kind of like someone hired me to go to another place and just spend like 2 weeks taking pictures.
Okay. Let's talk about that experience. I mean, that was the first time that we actually meet there, and how was the experience coming from America, with young Americans, musician in brass music, learning here from the masters of the Roma community? And I mean, I was video documenting you were taking the photography, and it was an incredible relationship and incredible moments for us there. But if you can share us your point of view and your experience when it comes to that.
Sure.
I mean,
and
basically you returned them after that. You've seen the people, you went on concerts, and you were doing also the shooting for the festivals and stuff. I mean, sure, you can rely to any information about coming from you and coming from them.
And it would be great if you can, while you are talking, if you have some of those photos from that period, so you could share with us, so we can
yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to open.
Great. Super.
Let's see. So I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see?
Oh yeah, that's Matt. Nice.
I mean, we spent what was it, like 2 weeks, right?
It was 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so there were like, I didn't take pictures every day, but most of the time. So there are like thousands of pictures. So I just grabbed a few of them without even, there's no story here. It's just the pictures that caught my attention, right? I particular have seen that I like funny within pictures. Not all of the pictures have that, but that's something that is close to my heart, right? When I see there's like this documentary or street photographer, I forgot his name. He's like one of the classics, right? But he loved that stuff, right? So I'm gonna need your help, Nena, to remind me where was it, because I think it was in the house of the drummer, of the person who makes the drum, right?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot his name. It sounds somewhere in Angelovac, or close to Vranja, but it was like 2 years ago, so my memory is not great.
Yeah, no, exactly. Mine too. Mine the same. So yeah, it definitely it definitely put my things into perspective, right? Because here in Boston and in New York, for whatever reason, I'm surrounded with musicians, and I've been to a lot of events in Boston that had to do with brass bands, right? Like different brass band coming from different parts of the country. They would get together and play music, right?
Yeah.
But coming over there and seeing these musicians, it definitely took it to my perceptions to the next level. I was really surprised and in awe, like the quality of the music, right? The quality of the music, the intensity of the music, the like seeing kids that were like 3 or 4 or 5 playing music, you know. This was in one of the musicians' house. They were rehearsing or practicing. Maybe they were like the 3rd or 4th day. I think it was the day before the festival, no? The youth festival.
Yeah. In Surdulica, yeah.
Yeah. This is the festival. This is when the American kids and the Roma kids met. I'm right here in this corner right here. This was after the festival. They were just practicing. This was them rehearsing by the hotel. This is me again. This was the time that we went to a Roma wedding, right?
Yes.
And yeah, the girls were sort of like playing with the kids. And this was part of the wedding. Also, and this was from the outside, right? Because we couldn't go in. When they told me like, oh, we're going to a Roma wedding, I was like, nice. I'm gonna go and experience a Roma wedding. But when we got there, we just sort of had to stay outside, of course, because we were not invited. But still, it was an amazing experience. And this was in Nico's house, I believe.
Oh yeah, that was part in kids. Yes, in Stip. This was also
yeah. The kids were trying traditional Macedonian dresses, right?
Yes.
So the girls in this picture were trying the shoes. Oh, sorry. There. So yeah, this moment hanging out. What else? Pictures, photos, shoes. This was the parade, right? You can see the American kids with the Macedonian dresses or costumes, yeah. It was at the end of the festival. This was on the other town that we went to with the other musician. I can't remember his name.
In Berovo?
Huh?
In Berovo, I believe it was in Berovo.
Berovo? Yeah. I don't remember. And he was one of my favorite, you know, him and the
he had the
other.
charisma. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
always in charge of the band.
yeah. I think the for some reason the drummers in our trip were super characters. They were like super funny and super friendly and super nice. Okay, so these are the pictures that I have from the trip. But yeah, in general, it was, I mean, just the experience of being able to spend time with a group of people and taking pictures. From a photographic perspective, it was really interesting because most of the days were the same, right? It was rehearsing and rehearsing and then social time. Um, and then trying to find something interesting, right? Within that routine, it was kind of like hard in some way. Um, so, but you know, you always do. It's amazing. Like when you think like, no, there's nothing more. You always find something new, right? You just sort of you have to keep trying and kind of like it's not like you think about these things. It just, you try different things. You try something different. You sort of like put your camera in a different way. Sometimes it's like what I was saying, you feel inspired by something and then a new photo comes out or a new moment comes out. Um, but yeah, the experience of being with the group, that was, of course, from a photography perspective, was challenging because you can keep the novelty for so long, right? Um, but then the experience of being there, it was amazing. It was amazing. I wish, you know, I wish I could be bilingual and speak more or speak Serbian or Macedonian. That would have made a difference. Or yeah, being bilingual, that would definitely will help. Um, yeah, or no more. You know, like I was reading a little bit of the history, but I couldn't understand the context of the towns where I was going in, right? That we were visiting, right? Um, yeah, but overall, it was an amazing experience. You know, it was, you know, you're working, you're having fun, you're having like drinks. That's always good, of course. And taking pictures, that doesn't feel like a job. To be honest, it doesn't feel. I don't feel like I'm working when I'm taking pictures. It can be draining because you have to be waiting. Um, Maybe it's because I'm older, but you get tired after a while, right? You have to be like paying attention all the time because you don't want to miss things. Um, yeah.
Okay.
So that was that. Those are the pictures that I have from the trip to show. But there were like thousands more. There were
Yeah,
like so many more.
So many more, because for 2 weeks taking pictures every day, it's a lot. Can we discuss about some commercial projects that you have been working on?
Lately, I haven't. I don't have any commercial projects to show you. The last commercial project that I did, well, I call that commercial. It was more like a commission that I got. Let me see. Sorry, setting this out so you can see my face. The last commercial project where a client hired me, it was from a few years ago. Maybe I can find it on my portfolio. Let's see. And these are kind of like old pictures. Let me see. Yeah. It was this organization in Boston. They hired me to create like a narrative or create a project around the harbor, right? There's like in Boston, there's like a 42-mile harbor. I don't know how much will that be in meters or kilometers. Um, Maybe like 60 something or 70 something, I guess. Um, and they wanted me to create like a visual representation, a visual narrative of it, right? So during one summer, a few years ago, I walked all of the miles, right, in different moments, kind of like trying to get a sense of what was happening in that in the harbor, right? Because there's a path that sort of like goes from the beginning to the end, with the exception of different sections, right? Because there's like a house or the path is blocked for whatever reason. So I just sort of like, you know, walk around, taking pictures, talking to people, seeing how different people experience and enjoy that path. Um, I think that was one of the last. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is Boston, and within Boston, the imagery of what Boston is. A lot of people wouldn't think that this is Boston, but this is actually Boston. That's the city at the end. There's some islands outside of the city that are considered part of Boston. So even though this was like a commercial project, it still has that element of photojournalism, which is kind of like
More
part of what I do.
documentary than yeah.
I'm sorry?
More of a documentary approach than
Yeah.
classic. And can you tell us a little bit more about the equipment that you're using? Because people are obsessed. Mostly young photographers are obsessed with what kind of gear you're using, what kind of body, what kind of lenses. You said that you're using one wide lens and one long lens when you're going out. But and I have another question, because I also do a photography since I was a kid. And you said that you start with photo cameras that, film-based photo cameras. And for me, it was very difficult after 15 years of learning how to develop a film and then develop a photography. And I enjoyed that kind of magic. When digital photography came out, I was a bit disappointed because, it was no more like, it wasn't like a skill. Then it was like two buttons clicking and make it beautiful. But did you have that kind of problem when you switch from, or maybe even you felt even relieved that it's easier now with digital photography, with digital photography?
Yeah, well, it depends. I think like for photojournalism, definitely digital works as good or better, I would say, because it's more convenient, right? You sort of like take your picture, you select your images, then you have to edit them, of course, lightly if it is photojournalism, and then you go to the next thing, right? But I do have to say, in terms of quality of the image, with black and white, depending on your practice, there's something about film that digital hasn't been able to get there. I think there's something about the texture of the image, the visual texture of an image. And I'm thinking mostly of black and white.
Yeah.
In color too. There's like a depth to the not even to the photo, but just to the colors. It's sort of like you can touch them with your eyes in some way. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I'm glad that digital happened. It's also more. I think it's more environmentally friendly too. Because you have all these sort of like rolls of chemicals, and there was a film that they take space or they end up in the trash. I mean, I think that I'm not sure, because at the same time you are consuming more electricity now because of digital, right? So I don't know environmentally, to be honest, which one is better.
Yeah.
But I love digital, to be honest. In terms of cameras, this is what I have. It's like it's hard to see, but it's like a Canon Mark III, and this has like the 24 lens, and at the bottom, I added a battery grip, which has 2 batteries, right? So it lasts longer. Because sometimes I haven't done it in a while, but in Boston I used to maybe like spend hours being outside, right? Following protesters or whatever project that I was working on. So just having that battery grip, and it's also better for my hand.
It's more
my hand
when you
Sorry?
It's more ergonomic especially when you photo like portrait photos.
Yeah, that too. But with this, I don't know if you can see it, but my hand sort of like covers all of the camera, right? If I had taken out like the bottom part, this section here, like my hand will be kind of like my finger will be floating here. I just have to kind of like put it at the bottom. So it's with this, I feel like more kind of like the camera is not getting in the way of things, and it makes a difference. I never thought of that, but it does makes a difference, right? Like the kind of camera that you have and how it fits in your hand. I know that you can get used to everything, right? But the same with shoes, right? It's like you prefer to have something that fits more your feet. So at the very beginning, when I was having more sort of like cameras that were more like amateur, I would use them. But then I remember when I got these that are kind of like pro, my hands were like, wow, what is this? It's just sort of like, it felt amazing.
Yeah.
And after a while, I have this camera for a while because they last for long. You don't even think about the camera, right? That's what I do. It's like whenever I want to upgrade for equipment, I do my research, and depending on what are my needs, I buy equipment, right? And then after that, I don't think about cameras, to be honest. I don't think about like this lens or this brand new lens that came out. I don't think about that stuff. You know, I know at this point the kind of photos that I take and what I enjoy, and my style. So I try to get equipment that helps me with that. And after that, I don't really care, to be honest. Yeah, some people sort of like are into it. Like they know about all the lenses that are coming out, and that's fine. But I only know about what the models when I'm going to buy something, and it hasn't happened in a while. Because maybe like in a few years I will go to the mirrorless cameras that are kind of smaller, smaller and lighter. Because this camera is heavy. I think I have like 10 pounds there.
Yeah, with the battery and with the lens together.
Yeah. And I used to have, well, I still have it. I haven't used it in a while. One of those long lenses, 70 to 200. With that is a couple of extra pounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, but now, you know, AP, Associated Press, they started using mirrorless cameras. Yeah. And I can see the benefit in that because it's like carrying all the weight. Like at some point, your back, you know, it hurts.
I have Sony Alpha mirrorless, Sony Alpha 7 III, and it's a great piece of equipment. And also Canon and Nikon have, of course, mirrorless. And I've seen some photos from those models that are also great because they are complicated computers inside, so and with great sensors, you know, but the benefit is that they are lighter and more mobile to use, which is great also. And I guess you don't do much post-production of the photos because of the genre of your photography, so you probably don't spend hours in Photoshop or in Lightroom editing your photos.
No, not really. I work with the contrast mostly, you know, just to give it, because sometimes the images when I shoot in RAW, so sometimes the images look flat. So I just sort of like adjust a little bit of the contrast, check that the exposition is good. If they are like tilted, I fix them a little bit, you know. But I try not to, within photojournalism, you are not supposed to kind of like do major editing, right? Because then there could be the accusation that you're trying to create something or trying to hide something. So it's better just to do very, very light work, just to make it look better, and that's it.
Yeah.
Perhaps with let me see if I have well, I don't have any here. I was going to show you. Oh no. Like this type of picture here is more like street photography. With that one, I take more time, you know, trying to make sure that at least the clouds in this case, for instance, are not 100% white, that there's a little bit of gray there. Yeah, I mean, this kind of photo, I took this with a Fujifilm, and it gets close to black and white, but I don't think it's the same. It never gets to the, sorry, it gets close to the texture of film.
Yes.
But I don't think it gets there.
Yeah, I know the difference. I know what you mean. And do you
Yeah.
prefer color photos or black and white? Because most of your photos are color, but you mentioned that you talked about the magic of black and white photos. So do you prefer when you taking photos that are not for job, maybe just for you? Do you prefer them to be black and white?
Yeah, I think like when I was doing street photography, definitely that was black and white most of the time, for sure. Um, I I still don't know how to put into words, you know, what is the difference. Of course, with color, there's more communication. There's like another layer there. Um, but it's like I don't think that what black and white photography is better. But it just adds another perspective. It's like different perspective, right?
Definitely.
Uh, yeah. So yeah, and it's a shame I don't have. Let me see. Maybe I can pull some here. Um,
It would be great if if you can show us some of your favorites photos and elaborate them. Why are they, you know?
interesting. Yeah, I'll have to. I'll have to think about that because I like I said, I like funny stuff like this, for instance. This is I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Wall Street Bull,
Yeah,
right? There's like that sculpture, and people for some reason you can see the paint. These are the testicles of the bull,
yeah. They like
People always
right?
touching the testicles, even.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what is the tradition or where it came from. I don't get it. It's a touristic thing to do. So I like this sort of thing, you know, like simple and funny, you know. This is a I think I was trying to do a series on tourists, right? Because whenever we went to, everyone does it, I guess. We go to another country and we take all these silly pictures.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think I have that many. Yeah, but I can show you one of my favorite projects or one of my favorite moments within a project. Um, I really like working on this. This is a puppetry group that is based in Vermont, which is to the northeast of the United States. And they are well known. You know, they have traveled all over the world and they've been around for like 50 years. So this is, I mean, I think a lot of photography for me is also experiential, right? It just, like I said, it takes you to places and it allows you to experience certain things that perhaps you wouldn't experience because you didn't have a reason to go into this world, right? So this particular project, um, they have like a farm in Vermont. So I have spent like months being with them, you know, taking pictures, working with them, doing different sort of thing. Um, and yeah, I really enjoy doing this, you know. And again, you see, to me, I think it is funny. To me, it is funny because of the elements that are, you know, interacting with each other, but also it's simple, I think.
Have you ever
Irwin is the name
have
of
you ever
the
submit
last name.
have you ever submit some of your photos to some kind of exhibition? I guess in New York there are a million of exhibitions.
Yeah, no, not anymore. I used to do it. I
Yeah,
I don't like myself. I used to do it. I had exhibitions in the past, but it's just a lot of work and it's not really, you know, it's just people saying like, oh, you know, congratulations. Da, 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 da. I don't know. I don't get anything out of it, to be honest.
So what's
So these
the
are,
what's the future like for you? What are the plans?
well, that's a good question. Like at this point, I wanna do more video. I want to do more video stories. That's, I think, something that I definitely in my plans. And trying to figure out more of what's going to be my relationship with photography, right? I would definitely love to travel more. I think in my job, they have mentioned the possibility of going to Miami, because there's a lot of Haitians there, spending some time over there. And I'm sure that, you know, things get to a better point, maybe go to Haiti at some point. That will be interesting. But yeah, I think the future is there are a lot of video, more video, and kind of like trying to deepen my relationship with photography for sure.
Okay.
So, and understanding, like, you know, that deepening, that depth, that new relationship, what shape it's gonna take. That's something that I haven't figured out yet.
Well, great. I mean, you have a lot of experience. You're very talented. So,
Thank you.
of course, whatever you do in the future, we would like to share it with you again. Because we are kind of rounding this second edition. If people have other questions, they can write or they can ask. If not, Leo, it was incredible. I mean, thank you very much for sharing your time about your experiences in photography and what you do, and things about New York and America, and your work with the Haitian Times. Branko, if you want to add something to this point, you're welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that in Macedonia, Google Street View went once and they never come back again, you know, so we have so we only can see from 1 year what was happening here. So
it's nothing personal with Macedonia, I'm sure, you know. But Puerto Rico being part of the United States, I think our last time that we were there was 2015. So, you know. Yeah, I mean, if anyone has any questions, I hope this was helpful, and, you know, thank you for inviting me.
It was great. It was, I mean, thank you for your time. I hope we will have a chance again to meet and to discuss photography and videography, because also we are doing that in for our living, and maybe we can sometimes even
work together again.
Yes.
Yeah, collaborate on any level. That would be great to have you again with us here in, you know, any normal circumstances than COVID-19. Yeah.
I'm happy to go over there, and if you guys want to come to New York, you know, for sure, just let me know. Yeah.
I got you on that. Yeah. Okay, so I think we can wrap it up. Thank you very much. I think we're probably people just, you know, gonna take their time and just listen and enjoy, you know, with a couple of drinks. It's almost 9 p.m. So yeah. Thank you very much, Leo, for your time again. And I do hope that we get to meet pretty soon and maybe work even together on some projects.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that moment. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys for your time. You can find the video.
Tatiana, guest one, Olga, Boyan, Natasha, y Shavka. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all. And you can find this on the social media. Thank you and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
See you later. Have a good night.
Ciao.